What is going on, guys, and welcome to my new video. And in this video I shall be reviewing the new Seren spells and prayers that were recently released into the game with the new Grandmaster quest, The Light Within. So to start off with, I'm just going to say that, give a quick overview of what I think of the update. So I thought the quest was really good. They did a really good job on the quest. It was an enjoyable quest to play through. It visually looked really good. So yeah, I enjoyed doing the quest. However, I feel like the rewards I feel like the spells and the prayers, which is sort of the bulk of the rewards, weren't quite up to scratch, really. So I'm going to start off with the positives, which ones I think are good, and then I'll move on to the ones that probably need a little bit of a tweak to make them actually usable in gameplay. So to start off with, there's the skilling spells, all of which do have some usability. Nice to have some skilling spells in the game, and I'm going to go over each of those now. Okay, so the first spell is the Prism of Dowsing. It takes 86 magic to cast and takes 3 earths, 3 fires, 3 natures and 3 soul runes. And when you click it, you get this prism. You get 103 experience, and what it does is it attracts wisps to it at divination, so you can basically place one close to the rift, and the wisps will then be closer so you don't have to run further away. So it's just like a sort of it makes it a little bit easy to train your divination. So that is the first spell, and then you can see it has got a bar. The time runs out and you have to cast another one, and also you can't cast another one within a certain distance of this prism. The second spell is the Crystallize spell that takes 88 magic to cast, and it's 6 waters, 6 fires, 6 chaos and 6 soul runes. And what you do is you cast this on a tree, mining, fishing or full box trap, and basically what it does is it converts any items that you will get from that into experience, and I think it's about 50% bonus experience, but you get no items. So if I chop this tree, you'll see that I get 75 experience. I've got bonus one cutting, 75 experience for 1 log. Now if I cast the Crystalline spell, which lasts for 30 seconds, you can see it's got this glow around the bottom. I got 112 experience, so you can see you get about 50% experience bonus. Okay, so that is the Crystalline spell. The next spell is the Rapid Growth spell, and this allows you to skip a growth stage of a herb, tree or fruit patch whilst farming. It takes again 88 magic, and it's 3 waters, 3 earths, 3 natures and 3 soul runes. So again, this is you can only cast it once per day per patch, but it will be good for I'd say doing a magic tree run or a yew tree run, because it'll allow you to skip a growth phase, which is a good at least an hour or two on each one. So yeah, maybe allow you to do an extra tree run, or maybe allow you to do a little bit more farming in a day. But again, the usability of the spell isn't that high, because farming is one of those skills that's done over a long period of time, where most of the skill is trained when you're offline or doing something else. So skipping a single growth phase once per day, probably in the long run won't save you that much time, especially since fruit trees, herb and trees take such a long time to grow that the majority of it is done when you're offline anyway. So the final skilling spell is the Crystal Mask, which takes 90 magic, and it's 7 earth runes, 6 fires, 5 bodies and 4 soul runes. And when you cast this, you get 5 minutes of reduced chance of being caught while pickpocketing, and reduced chance of being harmed whilst pickpocketing. And I've tested this out at Elf City Theming, and it does seem to give you a nice little boost. And you also, if we zoom in, you can see I've got a little crystal mask rotating around my head. Okay, so that is the spells covered. I'm going to go into the prayers now, and I'm going to start with the skilling prayers. And first off, I'm just going to say, I think that it's odd having combat and skilling prayers on the same prayer book, because in either situation you're not going to be using the other. So if I'm woodcutting with the Superheat Form prayer, or mining with the Superheat Form, I'm not going to need Turmoil. Same goes with the Chronicle Absorption. If I'm doing divination, I'm not going to need Turmoil, and vice versa. So if I'm killing Nex, killing Carthok King, whatever, I'm not going to be able to want to use that Superheat Form. And also the rest of the prayers just makes this prayer book look a little bit cluttered. The Superheat Form is right next to Soul Split, so if you're prayer swapping, it makes it easier to flick the wrong prayers on, and I just feel like it's not particularly well designed at the moment. But yeah, so the first prayer is the Chronicle Absorption, which basically allows you to absorb the Chronicles straight away instead of having to hand them in. Not a particularly useful prayer, as there are so many places where you can actually hand Chronicles in. So I probably wouldn't use that prayer. But yeah, you can see you just turn it on, and then when you get a Chronicle from Divination, you'll get the Hunter experience straight away, as opposed to having to hand it in. Now, the second prayer that definitely does have usability is the Superheat Form prayer, and what this does is it instantly burns your logs for you when you cut them, and also instantly smiths your ores if you have the required coal. So for mining, the usability isn't that high because you have to have the coal in your inventory, and in that sense you'd have to keep going banking to get coal if you wanted to use this prayer, and that reduces your efficiency of the mining, especially since smelting bars doesn't give that much experience. However, when I turn this prayer on and hit this tree, you'll see my XP at 135 XP. That was from burnt and no log, and that was from burning the log and also cutting it down, and also found a golden rock, which doesn't look like a rock at all. Anyway, so that is the Superheat Form prayer. And at the moment, this is, I think if you use this at Jadinko Firemaking, it is very, very good experience at the moment. It's about 650k an hour, I think someone told me, which is a lot of experience an hour. So yeah, this has definitely got some usability at the Jadinko Firemaking, gives people alternate methods to sort of ivy and crystal trees, and probably suggest wearing like full Dragon Rider armor and Dragon Rider amulet. That'll give you like plus 30-40 prayer bonus, so your prayer won't drain too quickly. Now that I've covered the skilling aspect, which I think we've done relatively well, they do have some usability. I'm going to move on to the combat prayers and the combat spells. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to go over is the combat spells, and they're sort of split up into different classes. So the first class is the prisms, which have different effects in combat. So when I click the prism, so the first is the Prism of Restoration. It takes 76 magic to cast, 6 astrals, 2 bloods, and 6 soul runes. So when I cast this, a nice little prism appears with a bar very similar to the Wisp one. And you can see I've got this animation going around me. And what it does is it heals your familiars, and it also gives your familiars special attack, 10 special attack points, and gives you a chance to save a scroll. So that's what this prism does. The next prism is the Prism of Salvation, which is the green one. It takes 80 magic to cast, and 6 astral runes, 2 bloods, and 6 souls. And when we click this prism, it basically allows you to escape to it within a certain click radius. So if I click it, I teleport to that prism. However, it does have a cooldown on it, so I can't instantly teleport again. So it's got a couple of second cooldown, and then you'll be able to teleport again. The final prism is the Prism of Loyalty, and this takes 82 magic to cast, 6 astrals, 2 bloods, and 6 souls. And when we cast this Prism of Loyalty, it allows you to siphon HP into it of your own to be used at a later date, and it will heal anyone that comes in a 5 square radius of it that is below 25% of its health. So it only heals you when you hit lower than 25%, so you can see I'm putting 10% of my HP into it every time. And then now I'm lower than 10%, I come into its radius and I get healed back to full. It gives you all of the HP that you had stored in it. So that is all the prisms. We're going to go on to the auroras next. So these auroras there's 4 different ones, and these are the spells that you actually cast. So there's an air, water, earth, and fire one. And when we click, we'll click auto cast, and that is what your auto cast spell will look like. So, and as you can see there was like an animation, and that was the Opal Aura special attack. And what it does, the Opal Aura special attack extends the life of a prism. So that's what the Opal one does. When you have this selected, it has a chance to extend the life of prisms. The Sapphire one has a chance to buff the prisms. So if I just attack this, it might work. And what it does is it gives the prisms a small buff. So I would assume that the Prism of Life maybe heals you a little bit more. Prism of Salvation reduces the cooldown on how long you can teleport to it, and the Prism of Restoration maybe increases the amount of special attack that your... there we go, I think that was it then. Was that it? Here we go. So that has given this Prism of Loyalty a small buff, but it doesn't actually tell you what the buff is. So unfortunately, I'm not sure what that is. Sorry. Okay, so the next spell is the Emerald Aura, and is 79 magic, 3 earths, and 1 soul rune. And what this does is it provides a 1% damage reduction per stack when its special attack activates. So when its special does activate, it activates whilst you're using abilities, and you'll get a little icon on here that gives you that will pop up and say that you have a damage reduction. There it is there. So reduce damage by 1% per stack. So that's, I know, see I've gone up to 2 stacks now, but they degrade very quickly. You can see I've already gone back down to 1 and then back to 0. So this does not give you very like a lot of protection at all. You can see that was very, very fast, that degraded. Okay, so the final one is the Ruby Aurora spell, and this is like, so this spell is level 81, costs 3 fire runes and 1 soul rune. And this is very similar to the Emerald one, in that it allows you to stack, but it's more of a support role spell. So it allows you to stack up to 3 times, and it gives a 1% damage output stack, or a 1% damage output to anybody within a 2 square radius of you. So if you have the, so say you have 3 stacks, everyone around you will get 3% damage output, but you won't get any extra damage. And also your damage is reduced because this spell caps at like level, it has a level cap, so you won't be doing tier 90 damage even with a tier 90 weapon. You can see my hits are quite low compared to what I would be hitting, for example, if I swapped to a tier 90 spell. Ability of this Ruby Aurora is really only in, it has such a small square radius as well, so you have to be within 2 tiles of the caster, which is outrageously small for most team bosses. So it basically has no usability at like Yakamura, because you get spread out quite a lot. The only place that this probably has a usability is hard mode Virago, because with normal mode Virago, I don't, like, you would only be buffing a couple of people, which probably isn't worth your loss in DPS. And the only team where you have like a concentrated number of people, or the only boss where you have such a concentrated number of people in a small area and such a high number of people, is hard mode Virago. So that's the only sort of situation I can see this being of any use. So just going over all the prisms, on paper they look quite good, but in reality they don't really have that much of a use. The Prism of Restoration, you don't really need to heal your familiar anywhere, especially with the introduction of the Beast of Burden and Legendary Familiars, because they don't get attacked by anything. They don't take damage. So that kind of reduces the usability of the Prism of Restoration. The Prism of Salvation, the only thing I can think of is being used to escape like Araxor's Cleaves, or maybe the Waterfall on P4 Virago. But this is probably harder than just clicking away from the actual boss itself. And then the Prison of Loyalty is kind of outclassed by the Barricade and Heal Other, because if you're at like raids, Barricade Heal Other, you can heal your whole team. There isn't really a use for storing any HP in the Prism of Loyalty. The only place I can possibly think about this being any use is at Araxor, so put one down at the start of P4, and then fill it up a little bit, and it's there as like a safety net if you do get comboed, and it does give you like it'll give you like a couple of thousand HP buff if you do drop below 25%. But obviously you probably won't need that every kill, and you'd have to bring all the runes for it. So I don't know the feasibility of actually using the Prism of Loyalty. I don't know how high it is. Now, because these prisms don't have much usability, this also makes the Opal and Sapphire Aurora kind of obsolete, because if the prisms have no usability, the spells above the prisms obviously have no usability. The only 2 spells that are really any worth using are probably the Ruby Aurora, but again, it's a very small niche where it's actually worth using, which is like hard mode Virago. And then the Emerald Aurora, you saw in that brief sort of demo that the stacks degrade so quickly that you get barely any damage reduction using this spell. You also get a loss in DPS because it caps again at a lower level spell if you're using tier 90 weapons. So yeah, this is definitely not for higher levels, or there isn't really any usability at higher levels. Final 2 spells are sort of protection spells. So the first is the Intercept spell, which basically places a ward on somebody for 3 seconds, and you will take all the damage that they would receive with a 5% damage reduction. It's 77 magic to cast, and it takes 3 air runes, 3 earths, and 2 souls. I can't really see a situation where this is useful, because most of the situations you have 1 tank, and they know that they're going to be taking the damage. The only place I can possibly see this having a use is like if someone disconnects and you want to try and save them from dying, say in like an ice prison. And then the final one is the Shield Dome, which is 84 magic, 3 water runes, 3 earths, and 3 souls. So when we cast this Shield Dome, we get a nice effect around us. And you can see in the bar I have a 50% damage reduction lasting for 15 seconds. Now this is a channeled ability, so if I move, it'll cancel it, but I can eat inside of it as shown there. But if I move, it gets cancelled. Now it has a 2-minute cooldown, but by cooldown it means that to get the 50% damage reduction again, you have to wait 2 minutes. But if I click it straight away, I have a diminishing return, so it's now 25% damage reduction. And then if I click it again, it goes down to 12%. So you see it gets halved every time you use it, and then every 2 minutes it'll go back up to the next threshold, I believe. Now, it's quite a cool spell on paper, but there aren't really any bosses that require team damage reduction. Now, these spells, or in one of the Q&As or one of the live streams that they did, they said these spells were designed around raids. Or raids were in the back of their minds when they were designing these spells. However, this Shield Dome ability isn't really needed, because with the Barricade and Healer there, damage reduction isn't needed in a team, and you lose the complete DPS output of one person for 15 seconds when you're using this. Again, in all bosses, DPS is such a crucial role that losing one person to activate this spell just isn't worth it for the damage reduction, especially since it has such a long cooldown to get back up to the 50% damage reduction. So that is all the spells covered, and then we're going to go on to the prayers now, the combat prayers. So the first 2 combat prayers are Light Form and Dark Form, and what these do is they basically double the chance of the special of the Ancient and Seren spells activating. So if I activate Light Form, which you can see here, the animation, although it looks really cool, I think it looks really good. And with this activated, say I activate this Emerald spell, it gives me double chance to get the special. So you can see I've already got 2 stacks, 1 stack, but it's so doubles the chance of getting the special of the Auroras. And the Dark Form spell doubles the chance of Ancient spells activating their special. So basically you'll get Ice Barrage will freeze using abilities, Blood Barrage will heal you, and so on. Now, one thing to note with this update is that Ice Barrage, now using an auto attack using Ice Barrage will no longer instantly freeze something. You have to wait for the special, but it will freeze whilst using abilities, but it won't do it instantly. You have to wait for it to activate, which it gives these prayers a usability, but again, it means that these are now usable. You don't have to use auto attacks to like freeze and heal yourself, but at the same time they're not very useful because they don't activate that often. Next prayer is Soul Link, and this allows you to share half of all the healing and half of all the damage with somebody. So I activate Soul Link, another person activates Soul Links, and now we're sharing healing and damage between us. On paper, it sounds like a really cool, really good tanking prayer. However, I don't know whether I think it's bugged at the moment. And what happens is it shares base damage and not damage that you actually receive. So base damage is what the boss would hit you if you had no prayers, no abilities. So say Virago melees me and hits me for a base damage of 5,000, but I have devotion up, I get hit at 1. The other person who is soul linking with me will get hit at 2,500, even though I've only been hit at 1. So that is how it's currently working. I don't think it's supposed to work like that. But it's not worth using at the moment because you're taking more damage than just one person would. The Soul Link prayer. A lot of the bosses have metas at the moment where it's just one tank, and the rest of the people, are mainly DPSs. So raids, you have one main tank, you've got healers, and you've got DPSs. At Virago, you have a main tank, a bomb tank, and DPS. You don't really need 2 people to take all that damage because one person can handle it enough. And having 2 tanks just loses damage, slows down kills, and isn't really needed. So although this might have usability in the future, at the moment it doesn't really fit anywhere into combat. Next prayer is the Teamwork Protection prayer, and it's probably the most useless prayer in the update. So when you activate Teamwork Protection, you get this little icon above your head, and it gives you a 5% damage reduction and 1% damage reflection from all combat styles. And stacks if the amount of people are using it up to 5 stacks, and you get a 25% reduction with a 5% reflection. However, it doesn't work with deflect prayers. So if I activate my deflect prayer, it turns off. But it does work with soul split. But there isn't a situation where soul split plus team protection is worth using over like a deflect curse. Because if you're getting hit a lot, for example like Yakamura, you're gonna want to be playing deflect range. You don't want to be playing soul split there because you're going to get rinsed, even with a 25% damage reduction, because 50% is so much higher. Like, there is just absolutely nowhere where this is useful at the moment. You get higher prayer drain for like less protection. It just seems like the most useless prayer on the prayer book. Final one is Fortitude, and this prayer is probably the biggest disappointment out of all of them. So on the live stream they said that this is going to be the definitive tanking prayer, this is going to be amazing, if you're a tank you're going to use this and it's just going to be the best. And it's crap. It's worse than Turmoil. So it gives you a base, if we open up the stats, it gives you base defense of 299, which is exactly the same as Turmoil gives you. Well, Turmoil also gives you melee accuracy and melee strength. So using Turmoil, you're going to hit higher. You're also going to have higher accuracy, which is very important for abilities like Debilitate. Because if you're not hitting with Debilitate, like because your accuracy is lower, you're losing out on that 50% damage reduction for 10 seconds a lot, even if you did have this up. You also lose out on DPS. The Fortitude also gives you a boost to your defense by 10%. Now, the way the game is at the moment, defense really isn't that important. Now, this 10% defense basically means that a boss might splash on you, but because they have such high accuracy anyway, it isn't really going to... you won't see much of a difference. Like when you change from, say, Void to Sirenic, you will see a bit of a difference, but not like a massive difference in how much damage you're taking. It's the same with this. You'll probably see a little bit of a difference in how much damage you're taking, but not that much. And that's because the important thing is damage reduction and not defense. Damage reduction is really important in the game at the moment. This is why tank armor you take a lot less damage, because it has a percentage damage reduction, and it just means that this spell is basically useless. It also gives you 100 HP boost, 100. So to put that into perspective, that's a 1/10 of a Brucip. So you can see my max life points is 9,990. I turn this on, it goes up to 10,000. Like, that's just, it's nothing. It's absolutely nothing. It does also allow for regeneration in combat as well, but regeneration is very slow. Like, it's 20 per every couple of seconds, so again, not really that noticeable. So this Fortitude prayer needs a massive buff for it to be anywhere near using for tanking, in my opinion. So that is all the Seren spells and prayers that have been released with the new update. So in short, the skilling ones were relatively well designed, do have some usability in the game. Especially this Superheat Form one could be quite an interesting way to train your woodcutting and fire making, different to the AFK methods like Ivy and Crystal Trees and, bonfiring. The Crystal Mass is good because it gives you a little bit boost to thieving. It's all basically just nice, little bit extra, making it a little bit easier to do your skilling. However, the combat spells and the combat prayers were just not thought out properly, in that it seems like someone's just come up with a load of different ideas and said, oh, this will be cool, this will be cool, this will be cool, but not actually thought how they fit into the mechanics of the game at the moment, so they're not usable at any of the bosses. Also, spells like Teamwork Protection and Fortitude, they're worse than existing things, and they're at higher prayer levels than existing prayers, and they're just, or like, Fortitude is one lower than Turmoil. Turmoil is so much better. Teamwork Protection is much higher than Deflect Curses, and it is much worse. So it feels like they just thought up all these different spells and prayers, and like, oh, this will be cool, but never actually thought where they could be usable in the game at this point, in sort of related to combat. Now, I understand that future updates they may design bosses where these work, but currently as the game stands, they have pretty much no usability anywhere that I can think of. I've tested a few things, like using it. So I tested using the Prism of Loyalty with Onslaught, and yes, it does work, but it's still extremely dangerous to use it whilst doing high level bossing, and that's more to like a problem with Onslaught than the Prism itself. It does allow you to hold it for longer, but as I said, if you're doing high level bossing, there's always that chance that you're going to get hit random damage that you're not expecting, and because you're such low HP anyway, you're going to get one banged. So I'm a little bit so some of it is a good update, but obviously I'm more aimed towards the combat side of the game. A little bit disappointed with this combat update, or the spells and the prayers update. I was hoping they would have a little bit more usability. But yeah, I hope this review has been helpful for anyone wondering what the new spells and prayers do, what my thoughts on them are and stuff like that. If you do think of any other uses, I'd be very interested to hear them in the comments, and I'll test them out and see if there's stuff I'm overlooking and stuff like that. But thank you very much for watching, guys. I hope you have enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one.